Hello! Welcome to Why Not Both, the podcast all about how our multiple passions and interests shape our identity and our lives. My name is Pam Schaefer, and I am a musician and therapist in Los Angeles, and I also happen to be your host. This podcast is produced by Laura Studeris, and for this season, we've partnered up with Under the Radar magazine. If you like what you hear, you can hang out with us on social media. We are on Twitter and Instagram at WNB the podcast. And if you really, really like what you hear, please support us on Patreon. We are under Why Not Both podcast. When you join our Patreon, you get a whole bunch of really cool behind the scenes stuff and you get to chat with us. And that's pretty awesome. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope you enjoy our interviews. For this week's episode, we got to welcome Alex Summers to the podcast. I hope that you enjoy our conversation. So Alex, welcome to Why Not Both.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks a lot.
Yay! It is kind of funny that we're both in LA and like on Zoom.
I know, we'd just be hanging out. We'd be sipping something nice in some nice place in Los Angeles, but not a chance.
Yeah. Well, before all this started, I would record sometimes in Silver Lake, and one of my friends has a lovely clementine tree. And so during an interview, we were just like eating clementines the whole time. And I was like, oh, this is the way to run a podcast.
Yeah, that is pretty dreamy.
It was so Los Angeles. So you mentioned you moved to LA, you said in 2017?
Yep. Yeah, I've been here only a few years, yeah.
Where did you move from?
I moved from Reykjavik.
That's my other favorite city.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite cities too. It's a really special place. And yeah, I lived there for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, I have family there, and it's a really special place to my heart. But it's also cool to move back to the US because, I was born in Baltimore, but kind of missed a lot. I moved away. I moved to Iceland in 2005, and I'd always visit my family, once a year. But yeah, it's kind of been pretty cool to be back in like the US and meet new friends in LA and kind of develop a music community out here. And I love Los Angeles, and I feel really lucky to be here. And I definitely, yeah, I mean, pandemic is so brutal anywhere, but I feel lucky that I can be outside at least,
Yeah. That was a small blessing when the trails reopened.
Yeah, I like going to Topanga. I have a few close friends that live out there, and that's always a nice way to spend a day.
Oh, Topanga is absolutely magical and strange. It's like this little pocket community in LA.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, have you been to, I mean, it's hard to go inside places currently, but have you been in the store Hidden Treasures?
I've been there before the pandemic, yeah.
That's hands down like my favorite vintage store in LA.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's fun. Fun with stuff, yeah.
Now I just want to go to Hidden Treasures. I guess like what brought you to LA? If you're from Baltimore and then you're in Reykjavik and then you came here, I guess like what was that journey?
I mean, I just came to LA, like I basically came here for a month in 2011 for a music project, and was pretty East Coast snobby, thinking California was really watery and like not very fun or cool or whatever. and gradually through the trip, I enjoyed it, and I was like, wow, it was really nice. And then I think 2014, I came for a few weeks for a project, and then maybe it was by 2015, I just came for fun, like got an Airbnb for like 3 weeks, and then did it again the next year, and then every trip got a little bit longer. And I'd always like, I knew a few people out here and would meet more people, but was never really thinking that much about it. And then it was, 2016 maybe, on like a month or 2 month trip or something, being like, wow, maybe it would be amazing to like spend part of the year here, because Iceland is really brutally cold and dark place. And so that was kind of the little fantasy. It was like, oh, live part-time in Reykjavik and part-time in LA. Yeah, it just quickly turned to being like, wow, I love LA. And I just, yeah, got a place here and like freighted all my music equipment, and kind of just felt like, yeah, it's just like felt really good to have a pretty radical life shift. Like, like it's really a different place culturally. And, physically and the climate, and like your life here is like, my life here is so different than it was, and it's just felt really fresh to be able to do that, to like change your whole life in kind of like one fell swoop. So I think it was just good for me to have a pretty big shift.
Yeah, and imagining in some ways there's like similarities, at least that I found between Reykjavik and LA. Like the creative communities are so vibrant in both, and also like strangely there's such a big like film scoring community in both.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the music scene in Reykjavik is really thriving and tiny and amazing, and everyone shares equipment and helps each other and plays on each other's records and projects. And um, I think that's here in LA too, but it's like maybe not citywide. Like there's just different pockets of it, where like Reykjavik, it's like literally one scene. So like
Uh-huh.
the same kid who plays drums in like some little jazz group is also doing like really weird experimental stuff, and makes like solo noise music, and is like a bass player in like some other band. Like it's just one scene, whereas LA is like
Mhm.
lots of pockets of different cool scenes. But yeah, they're both really vibrant art and music places, and we're lucky for that.
Yeah, like I'm curious what changed when you said like you changed your life with like one fell swoop. I was just like, so what's different? I mean, it sounds vaguely obvious that it's like it's almost like this weird contrast of light and dark, but like Iceland's not all dark, it's just physically dark during the winter. So I'm curious like what that shift felt like.
um, well, I mean, my whole life's pretty different. So I lived in downtown Reykjavik, and
Mhm.
I did own a car for most of my time in Iceland, but I didn't use it that much. You didn't need it. So I just
Mhm.
walked everywhere. So I had very much like a city kind of village life. And when you walk around Reykjavik, you see the same people, either your friends or just acquaintances, like all the time. So you're like, kind of have this very like, yeah, like stimulating life of meeting people either properly or just casually, and chance encounters, and going to coffee houses and dipping in here and there. And my studio was like a 4 or 5 minute walk from my house. So I just had this
Mhm.
very like downtown life.
Mhm.
Of course, you're always bundled up. It's pretty cold. And yeah, I don't know. It's just like a vibrant life in a way. And in LA, you kind of need to get in the car to go to most places.
Mhm.
So there's you have to like make plans with your friends. You don't just bump into them,
Right.
which is not a bad thing. In a way, I see people more for like quality hangs, because you have to make plans. And the climate, honestly, just the climate, like it sounds shallow to focus on that, but it's like radically crazy what like living in a place where the weather is like kind of perfect every day,
Yeah.
compared to just like battling the elements. I mean, it's fun, it's inspiring. I love Iceland, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I was just ready for the shift. And yeah, it feels really nice to like, yeah, wear very few clothes, be in an amazing climate, and like just like have, yeah, wind that's not freezing cold, and like,
Oh, you mean the wind that doesn't try to kill you when you like walk out the door?
yeah, and like you can like throw seeds and they grow trees. Like in, for example, one of my first years in Iceland, I was going to the art school, and I used to walk there through the snow. This sounds like an old geezer story, actually. And
What-
I remember my first semester, and I was like nibbling on something on my walk. I can't remember, some like, just, I don't know, carrots or something. And I thought you just, something like that, which just goes right into the earth. You throw it. You don't need to use a trash can. In a way, it's even better because it's just like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
almost, I would never litter, for the record, but I thought that. And then like months later, 3 months later or something, when all the snow had melted coming
You
out of
used
the
your
winter,
carrot top.
yeah, I like saw all these like fruit and vegetable debris from me, and I felt, of course, I picked it up and I felt bad, and I was like, wow, the earth, it's a different earth up there. It's like not fertile. It doesn't accept like stuff like that. It's like
Not
different.
during that season.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if that goes into like how my life is different, but it's, yeah, it's just different. Speaking different languages, different culture, people are different.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's so funny. I'm just imagining like the dawning horror on your face as you like saw all of the like plant matter and you're like, oh, oh, I did an oops.
Yeah, I was like, I'm done.
Oh, that's adorable. I'm imagining also that because of all those differences, it would lend to different creations. Like, obviously, like it's a really, that's funny. What came to mind, I was like, it's a fertile landscape there for creativity, you say, as Alex just said. So then I was tossing carrots at the ground and it rejected them. Um, but it's like there's so many different kinds of inspiration, whereas here, like you said, the weather is perfect every day, and when you're planning to get together with people, it's intentional. And I'm wondering, did that then influence your creative process?
Yeah, I think it definitely has. I think my life in Iceland yielded a certain kind of like work ethic and workflow, and also the collaborations that I have with those folks I work with less. Unfortunately, of course, I could work. You know, there's one Icelandic musician, Gila Valtýsdóttir, cellist, and
Mm-hmm.
I still work a ton with Gila. She's like one of my best friends, and we've been collaborating forever. But a lot of the other folks that I would work with, I just don't. And it's not because I don't think they're amazing. They're not immediately in my community. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, you tend to just like work with what you have. So I'm kind of, yeah, doing things differently here and working with different players and different friends and building music in a different way because I just have different things. And um, yeah, and I don't know. I'm like, maybe I'm too out of touch with like where I go or something when I make music because I'm like not super heady with it. I just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
zone out and like do something for a while until it like takes shape and I start molding it. But
Yep.
I do think it's influenced me like a lot. It's a little bit hard for me to like exactly distill.
Well, and in some ways that's a good thing. Like, I don't know if you have this experience, but when I'm creating, if I start thinking about what I'm creating, like it immediately shuts down whatever it is I'm creating.
Yeah, because it's never good. That's what I if
Yeah.
like thoughts come up, the thoughts are never like, oh, I'm clever, this is good. It's just wow,
No.
it's really bad. So you have to like push through that or just not think. And honestly, like a lot of the pieces of music I make are like pushing through that. So I won't like something and I'll abandon it, and then I'll decide to like fuck it up really bad through like either
Mhm.
through sending it through a bunch of outboard gear and like tape delays or just lots of plugins or both or dubbing it to micro cassette and back and like so much that you're actually trying to like destroy a piece of music or a sound to create something else and it
Mhm.
becomes less about the music and more just like pure sonics. Like I love
Mhm.
sound and I love music that's very much about the sound more than the notes or equal importance, you know? So like,
Mhm.
and then if you have a good sound, just like a grain of a sound, then sometimes that will inspire me and I'll write new music on top of that.
Mm.
Um, so that's like a really common workflow for me is because it's impossible for me to actually just do anything kind of in the moment that I usually think is good or something. Usually I have to kind of like fuck it up and then like rebuild something and be like, oh cool, it's turning into something. And like,
Now it's getting good.
yeah, well, don't go that far. I don't know if I could.
Now it's getting medium okay.
Well, if I just feel excited to keep going, that's all it is. We don't need to say good or bad. It's just like if you feel excited to like build something that's like a really good feeling. It's like, yeah,
Yes.
one of my favorite feelings. Yeah.
That is like when you stumble upon a sound that, I don't know how to put it other than like when I stumble on a sound that resonates with me, I'm like, oh, and like I just want to keep making that sound and elaborating on it. But it sometimes takes a while to find whatever that sound is. And it's not like I'm aiming for it. It's not like I have necessarily something in mind. It's more like you know it when you stumble on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Does that happen? Like, I guess when you're working on scores versus your own music, like, is it a similar thing?
Yeah, I think so. It's just with scores, the net is a little shallower or something because
Mm-hmm.
just making music for yourself, like out of thin air, then like I don't know, anything can happen. It's like pretty can be pretty abstract, like what you're doing or like in your mind or like but one of the things I love about film scoring, I love doing that work. It's so fun. It's highly collaborative. A lot of the time you're telling a story or you're trying to like bring to the surface from a scene what's really happening or you can be like deceiving what's happening or like a new layer
Mm-hmm.
of what you're trying to draw to the surface and so it's a little more intentional it can be a little more heady than the stuff we were previously talking about
Mm-hmm.
like intentional in what you're doing and like trying to make something softer or more abrasive or more like tense so
Mm-hmm.
but yeah so I think it's a little more intentional for me in that and like you're collaborating with people and you're trying to honor a lot of different people's like visions, including your own, you know.
Being in LA, like in regards to film composition and TV, like obviously things are kind of weird right now. But did you find it at least like easier to meet people? Or I guess like how was that different than when you were in Reykjavik?
Um, well, I have an agent who reps me for like film composing stuff, and he's here, so it's cool that we're just more in touch, you know. But
Hmm.
um, I mean, everything can be remote in a way, but yeah, there is something nice about it, I think, about being in the city where most of the folks that I collaborate with when I do my film scoring stuff, they're like here, you know, so
Yeah.
we can touch a lot. We speak on the phone. We used to meet up in person. I used to have people come for like playbacks at my old studio. That was like a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely not essential. And I was doing film scoring a little bit before I moved here, but certainly since I moved here, I'm doing more and more and more. So yeah, I think it's nice to be here.
Yeah, because I mean, like you said, right now we can't do like in-person playbacks and stuff, but when you spoke about collaborating in particular, like when you're working on films, like it's so many people's vision that when you are bringing that to life musically, it's so nice being in the room with people because you can, one, obviously watch it together, but then you can kind of get a handle on what their emotions are about it. And like, I don't know about you, but that when I've scored stuff like that helps me so much when I see like the creators' reactions to it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's juicy. Like,
No, yeah, it's definitely really valuable. And for example, a movie I scored a couple years ago called Honey Boy,
mhm.
Alma, who's the director, like she was extremely hands-on. So like she was just coming over, you know, like every other day, and she'd like sleep on the sofa in my studio, and we'd hang out and try stuff, and then I'd like wake her up and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" She'd like tell me. So that
Oh.
was like by far the most hands-on with a director, and like she's amazing and she's so cool and she's really sensitive, and like I would change something very slightly and she would either like it or not, but she was
Uh-huh.
kind of switched on to those changes, so it just made more sense for her to hang out, you know, while I was doing stuff. So that was really fun, and obviously that's off the table for a while, but yeah, I guess I got used to the virtual thing, but you're right, it's really not a replacement.
Yeah, because like we can definitely work virtually. Like on your current album, like did you work on that mainly here or did you work on it mainly virtually? Because like I've talked to a bunch of people about creation during this time in that way, where in some ways it's great because you have this like isolation that in some ways can really foster your creativity, but in other ways, like if you're used to collaborating with people, it kind of is strange in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the music that I'm releasing on March 19th, is that the stuff you mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, that was actually all written and recorded in Iceland, and then I mixed it in Los Angeles. So
Oh,
I didn't, so all the collabs were happening in person, but it was like, yeah, a couple years ago now.
oh my gosh. What's it like hearing that back now, like in context?
Well, I don't really listen to it that much because I listened to it enough when I made it, and I'm like pretty meticulous as a mixer. So when I mix, I
Mhm.
listen to, you know, a lot. Um, but yeah, for me, it definitely. So I'm releasing two albums on March 19th, and they're very much kind of crystallize an era for me,
Mhm.
which is I guess my last time in Iceland, like that studio that I was working in. A lot of my close friends in Iceland played on it, and it just like crystallizes that era of me kind of playing the space between just ambient and pure sound and also kind of song structure. Like I've always been really into both and
Mhm.
see both as like not enemies or something, whereas typically um I don't know, they don't flirt with each other that often, but I really tried to make this stuff like go into both, where sometimes it feels structured and it's satisfying and other times it just lacks the kind of typical, you know, verse chorus structure entirely and
Mhm.
goes into something else. And it was, yeah, it was just that time of me exploring that and playing strings and playing with sounds and very speed and tape and slowing things down. And yeah, I've made, you know, quite a bit of music since then that I'm also excited about, but I feel like, yeah, releasing this stuff is good because it's like, feels like can be a little more freed from that era or something.
It popped in my mind. I'm like, oh, it's like a love letter to that era.
A little bit, I guess. Yeah.
I like that duality you were talking about, of like kind of that duality of formlessness and sound versus actually having the structure of songs. And like, for instance, when you're scoring, it does have to be in a very particular structure. And like, I guess like thinking about that, how do you balance that duality, particularly when you are writing your own stuff, when you're in charge of it? Because for scoring, obviously you do have a structure, but when you're in charge of it, how do you, I guess, like, how do you know when a song needs structure and when it doesn't?
Well, I love structure. I really love like pop music diatonic chord progressions. I'm like the biggest sucker for it. I think they're all the best chord progressions. You just hear them every day on like top 40 radio. They're amazing. What beautiful chord progressions, and which is why they're being used by everyone forever in every decade, and harmony that's like that. But when it comes to like sound and production and like even just basic things like tempo or like how loudly or softly you play something, that's where my stuff's really different. But like, I think everything starts out pretty structured that I do. I never just make like a 7-minute drone. I always make music that's structured. And then if I want to leave that structure, or if I want to like abandon it or I'm not happy with it, it becomes something more formless. But like, I'm I write most of my music on piano or guitar. And so it's all pretty harmonic and melodic and like structured typically. And then it just, yeah, it can become less so later on if I want.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, because trying to balance those two ideas, that's really fascinating that it starts with that framework and then you kind of like destroy it outward from there.
Yeah, because I'm always battling feeling embarrassed or something of like everything I do. So I'll do something and be like, "Well, it's so basic," and then I'll have to like fuck it up a bit, and then like until it will hopefully become something. Yeah.
I just imagine your songs as like a really destroyed pair of jeans. You're like, it has structural integrity. I swear, it's just gone a lot of different directions.
Yeah, it's fun. It's all the process. It's fun. I love playing with sound. It's not all. It's like it's just fun. It's experimenting.
This is super random. Did you play on like the Sounds of Fisher records?
Yep. How do you know about that?
I just happened to look over at my incense burner that has my Fisher incense in it and was like, wait a second. Was Alex one of the people on the Sounds of Fisher?
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, that's kind of like a little inside family club thing where it's like 4 or 5 of us just like making music together. Mostly remote now, but I think the first one was in the room. And yeah.
Oh my God. I stumbled into that shop with actually my producer on this show is a good friend of mine and she had heard about the shop. And so the first time I was in Reykjavik, she's like, oh, I think you'd like this place.
Fisher is a family store, and it used to be UCN Studio, and then kind of converted it into this cool like art gallery slash boutique. And then UCN's family has been steadily like making stuff for years, and now they're like selling them like really beautiful, thoughtful, and like eco-friendly products. It's pretty cool.
It's amazing. I've been trying to coordinate with Lilia to be on the show because I love everything there. Like every time I've been back, I go there. That's so funny. Like I'm trying to imagine where UNC Studio was in there because I actually recorded at Airwaves. I recorded an episode of this podcast in the basement.
Oh, cool. No, the whole building was UNC Studio. I mean, it's a really small building for those of you who haven't been there. If you're listening to this, it's a tiny building, but yeah, that was UNC Studio.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I couldn't find a quiet spot. And so I interviewed the artist Madame Gandhi in like the basement, kind of near the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was so sweet of Lilia to let me do that. I was like, hey, this is really random. And she was like, yeah, go for it. Here you
go. Yeah, everything is possible in Iceland. You just like do whatever. It's so nice. Like there's no rules or something. So many rules in the US, going back to talking about like difference. That's really boring about the US. There's so many rules and people actually follow them and it's like really practical. And Iceland, I think because the scale of the society is small and it's a little more like trust and everyone's like cool. No one's like, there's no bad intentions really for the most part. And like that's kind of amazing. Like that, like living your life like in that space feels good.
Yeah, it was that's so interesting that that's how you put it, like that people generally have good intentions and like are very open in a way. Like I was walking home last I was staying there and like everyone was just like out together and I said to my friend Magnus, I was just like, "Oh, will you walk me to my room?" And he was like, "Why would I walk you to your room?" And I was like, "Well, it's 3 a.m." And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, shouldn't I be walking like with someone? Like together? Like, like strength in numbers?" And he's like, "What are you going to get blown away by the wind again?" He jokes with me because I had left the museum one day and like literally went airborne opening the door. I'm barely 5 feet tall. It was kind of funny. Literally thought I was going to get killed by the wind. And I was like, "No, I'm not afraid of the wind. I'm afraid of humans." And he's like, "What? What's anyone going to do to you here? Like, have you encountered anyone dangerous here in that way?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "I think you can walk home." He's like, "You can text me when you get home. It's like a 5-minute walk." And so I did, and it was like terrifying because like I'd never walked home alone at like 3 a.m. before, like on a major street, and I was fine.
There's no crime in Iceland. There's zero. When I
Yeah,
lived there for 12 years, there was one like stabbing, which was like really messed up, but one in 12 years, and it was like some weird circumstance. But yeah, you can walk anywhere, any part of the city, any time of night. Yeah,
yeah. It was wild and freeing in a way I had not experienced before, and I hadn't really linked the two together. But I was like, "Oh yeah, that's true. I could walk down a main street at like 3 a.m. and I also could say to a new friend, 'Hey, can I please record my podcast in your basement?'" And she was like, "Yeah." Like, sure. I don't know. I was thinking about what you said about like there's perfect weather here. So I was like, "Oh, what have you done not doing music in LA? Like especially during this time when it's like we can go outside at the very least, but did you get to experience like more of LA in the few years that you were here prior?"
a little bit. I go hiking with friends and uh, got a membership at the Huntington Library, stuff like that. But I always more. I want to see more. I drove up the coast and got to see a little bit of Northern California, which is like insanely beautiful. But I'd say I'm still getting to know LA.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, it's a pretty big city, and um, yeah, I sometimes go to the west side to the beach if I get invited or whatever. But yeah, it's like so much to see, and it's so beautiful though. It's amazing.
You mentioned you had a car there. Do you have a car here?
Yep, I didn't
Okay.
for a while, but I got a car. It's actually less than a year ago, but I finally did.
Hey, what popped in my head? I was like, you can just drive to the beach then. You don't even have to have an invite.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's not something I just like do on my own. I probably should. It would be a nice thing.
Yeah. Because when you're not writing music, I guess like what else do you enjoy doing or like what else kind of like feeds your time? I don't know how to put it other than that because like we have like an abundance of weird elastic time now.
I know. I was actually talking with a friend of mine who I just scored her movie, and we were joking that we were like such losers because our hobbies became what we do all the time for work, and we're lucky and it's cool. But then she's like, yeah, she's like, yeah, I don't do anything. I was telling my family other than like writing or working on like film projects or writing scripts or whatever, and there's like nothing else. And trying to think. I mean, I'm just a social person. I'm a very big extrovert. So like
Mm,
pre-COVID, I just like have a pretty good social life. I spend time with my friends and I go
mm,
out and I do things and I have people over and just like socializing. Really, I mean, I don't have a ton of other hobbies. I did go to art school and I like to draw and paint and collage and I used to do
mhm,
like video stuff. Not so much anymore, but
mm,
really music. It's really fulfilling, and I do a lot of different things in music, in
mhm,
addition to film scoring, I do remixes for people. I produce records for people and mix records for people. So it's like different parts of being a musical person. I get to like try them or like dip in and out. So it is, yeah, it's pretty fulfilling doing music, and it's really what I love. I listen to
mm,
music if I'm not working on it a lot. Listen
mhm.
to field recordings. Um, my most listened to song of 2020 was Ultimate Thunderstorm, which is like a field recording from this guy You can look it up. It's called Environments, and there's a bunch of Environments albums. And the one I'm obsessed with is Environments 4, which has Ultimate Thunderstorm on it. But that was like by far my most listened to track last year. And so I listened to that stuff, and I read a bit. I don't know. I sound like a boring person if I list all the things I do. I can't think.
I
I
literally,
make
it's so
potions and stuff.
I was like, I was literally looking at my phone to find like which thunderstorm was my favorite because I do have a playlist of thunderstorms. So like I felt you so strongly on that. I was like, which is my favorite? Because the thunderstorm I like has almost the same frequency as like pink noise. Like for whatever reason, I love pink noise.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very soothing.
Yeah. I like it better than white noise. I find white noise sometimes kind of abrasive.
And I used to like to travel, you know, like I would have been on
Uh,
artist residency last summer, and yeah, just spend a few weeks in London and see people there, and probably would have visited Iceland, and yeah, it just like most of us had a much more colorful life before COVID, but now it's like, yeah, my world is pretty small because you know you can't really do much.
yeah, I was gonna say as an extrovert, like I'm in fact actually quite introverted, and so in some ways this was almost relieving. But I noticed my extrovert friends, like even I want to see people now, and I'm like a house cat. Um, and my extroverted friends after like a few weeks were like, cool, 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 cool. Like when does this end? And now we're like a year in, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, uh,
Yeah, it's the worst.
oh. Do you have like a pod of friends that you see? Are there like people that you can see safely or socialize outside?
Yeah, so I'm not in any pod. I am just on my own, but I do have like all my close friends come over for tea pretty much. So I have like an outdoor space at my house, and I
Mhm.
just make a pot of tea and sit like 10 or 15 feet apart from like a friend, and usually it's just one on one,
Mhm.
and that's amazing. And I do that a couple times a week, so I'm definitely seeing people. It's just not like inside and all that.
Yeah. Okay. At least we are feeding your extrovert soul.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun to see my friends and catch up, and but yeah, I think everyone's in a similar place. We just have the deep pandemic fatigue. It's been going on forever, and but yeah, I'm lucky to have music in my life. It's this really amazing like thing that's untangible and can just always engage with it no matter what in life pretty much. So that is really, really amazing. I'm lucky for that.
Well, and that you described there's so many different areas of it. Like it sounds like you like to engage in so many different parts of it that it's funny that you described that as boring. I was like, that doesn't sound boring. That sounds like there's so many things that are fascinating within the sphere. And like within that sphere, there's different spheres.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice. Like ever since I got into music, I never wanted to be any one thing. I just liked music. I liked playing with music. I'm like way more drawn to recorded music and recorded sound than live.
Mm-hmm.
Like if whether something's live or not doesn't mean anything to me. Like I don't care. Neither one is more impressive or more engaging to me.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's this really cool essay where he talks about when like there was theater, and then we invented the film camera. So then we made cinema, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like it got its own word because they realized, oh, we can like film from different angles, and we can cut the films together later to like create illusion, or like it doesn't have to be just like the earliest films were just filming people on a theater stage and they'd act it
Yeah.
out. And then they quickly realized they could use it like in 3D or whatever you want to call it. And like music didn't get the same word. Like earliest recordings were people playing an instrument live, captured, done. But then pretty quickly as technology marched on, like it became like it's just we can do whatever we want. It doesn't have to be true to like what it might have sounded like in the room. And that's kind of the world that I'm obsessed with and have been drawn to my whole life ever since getting like a little 4-track tape machine and like experimenting with that and being like, whoa, you can play the
Mm-hmm.
same thing twice and it sounds different. Like, why does it sound different? I don't know. It's just like sound is interesting when you layer it and toy with it. And so, yeah, I love having my paws in different facets of music and sound, and it's really gives me a lot. But yeah, I think that's more ideal for me than just like settling into one groove and only doing, one thing.
It sounds like making potions.
Yeah, I make a potion every morning. It's my favorite.
I was like, what are the other potions that you make, like the non-sonic potions?
Well, it's just food. I mean, this is what I make for breakfast. I've been doing it for like 10 or 15 years or something. Yeah, it's good. I'm like
Like, tell
obsessed
me
with it.
more.
No, it's just like a bunch of stuff. Every morning is slightly different. I just basically blend a bunch of stuff into like some kind of crazy sludge, and you get addicted to it after a while. You know, it started out pretty reasonable and probably
Uh-huh.
like normal and tasted normal, and now it's just somewhere definitely not in the realm of normal, but it's I yeah, it makes you feel really good to like make a weird concoction, putting all these like amazing ingredients, and then yeah, you just yeah, I love it. When I travel, I even have like a weird, really like not as good travel version because I can't deal with not having it.
Well, like, I guess what were the ingredients this morning?
It's too many to list. Sorry. I had like 25 or 25 things maybe or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. That's like a whole alphabet of ingredients.
It's just stuff.
Oh,
Anytime I hear about any like weird ingredient or like some root or some like powder or like anything, I just like read about it, and if it sounds cool, I'll try it.
wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And thinking about like in connection to what you're talking about with sound, that totally makes sense. Like that sounds like almost like the edible analog of what you were saying when
Yeah, I
you're
wonder
making
what the connection is.
sounds.
I'm not sure, but
You're like, can't describe it, too many things. Just gonna consume, all good. Oh my God. Now I'm like super curious about what's in the potions. That's really funny to think about. And yeah, the whole thing of like when hobbies become your job, before all of this happened, I talked to people mainly about like why in some ways we discount the things that we do that aren't for money. Because some people do multiple things, but some of those things like do yield income in some way and some don't. But it's like it's strange when all of a sudden the thing that you did simply because you enjoy it also becomes your livelihood.
yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I never thought in a million years you could make music and not have to do anything else. Like it always seemed like, I mean, I was 18, I went to music school. I was like serious about it, but I didn't think about it like in a linear way. I didn't do it to learn some skill that I could then go get a job. I think when you get into making music, you just assume that you'll never be able to actually do it for work because that's what society tells you. That's kind of what your friends and family tell you for the most part is like you just like it's cool, but like you can't live off of it, you know? So
Mhm.
it's really cool if you can and if you can find a way to do what you love and not have to hustle, you know, like 9 to 5 basically.
Yeah. Like, did you ever, when you were in music school and art school and whatnot, like, were you ever working another job or?
Um, I mean, I worked all through high school, and then when I was in music school, I didn't. I got like crazy student loans, so I could not do that. And then
Mhm.
um, I was picking olives for a minute, but that was like a summer job. And then when I was in Iceland, no, I was just in the art school. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I'm like so lucky. I've just mainly been focused on music or art stuff for like a pretty long time.
Wow. Well, yeah, because in some ways it's strange. Like, we do describe it as lucky, and in some ways it's extraordinarily lucky. And in some ways it's also like, oh, that's so fascinating to not have like the flip side. There are people that I've talked to that are like, oh, I worked in another job for like 20 years and now I make music, or like I worked in film and now I have like a quote day job, but I love this other creative passion. And it's I don't know. It's very interesting to see like what energy we get back for the energy we put into the arts. And then like does that change your perception of the art you're creating?
Yeah, and I have friends that prefer it who like aren't amazingly musical or creative and artistic, but don't want to do it for work because they don't want
Hmm.
to have it associated to like commerce or like income or like depending on it or like, which is like really valid because it's, you know, it is true. Like, yeah, I am like dependent on that now at this point for like for my life, but it is kind of cool to do that. I think there's no one way, you know, you just have to like navigate it, see what feels good.
Yeah, because I think, when I started this podcast, part of it was all that like there's no like one path that works for everybody. And so hearing about people's journeys, it like, I mean, I started it because I found it interesting, frankly. Otherwise, I'm like, why would I have been talking to people about this? But yeah, that there's no like one size fits all, especially when we have this narrative of like, oh, you have this one passion and you follow this one thing and that's what you're supposed to do. You also did study other art forms. Like, did you ever think that at one point you would be like a professional, like visual artist, or was that a path that you were like, never mind?
Yeah, big time. I really wanted to, but the art world is hardcore. I realized that I wasn't cut out for it. Like, yeah, I'd been doing music forever, ever, ever. And then I started making a lot of videos for my music. And I don't really have any uh, like technical drawing skills and stuff. I'm quite bad actually, but I always have ideas and I like working with what I have and doing something within like what I'm able to do.
Mm.
So then I started doing that. And then I was still always doing music for fun, but like not, I was doing it less. And I was just like, really wanted to make art and do art. You know, I had some art exhibitions, were really fun, and
Hmm.
got into installations and like video stuff, like I said. But it's really hardcore, that world. You have to like constantly be like reinventing yourself, and you have to like talk a lot about your work, a lot. And you have to
Hmm.
really be able to like distill what you're trying to do, where you're coming from, where you've gone, and you have to constantly like reference other artists throughout like art history and contemporary art. And like it's definitely more like institutionalized for me is how it felt.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I still wish I had a better art practice and was like able to have some exhibitions every once in a while or something like low key. But it is like very demanding field and like
Hmm.
kind of it felt really hardcore. Whereas like I don't know, I feel like maybe music is a little more rock and roll because of rock and roll music. It has this blanket thing over it that's like a little more punk. I'm not sure, but I always felt most comfortable
Yeah.
making music.
And that's interesting to know that, like, in some ways, even though you did have those exhibitions and things like that, that you were like, oh, I don't think this is for me. This seems to not be the environment that's welcoming me.
Well, it's just really narrow. I don't think I could have done all the other things that I'm doing now and done and have done that. I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, which is I've never felt that in music. I've never felt I needed to choose anything. I'm just like winging it all the time. But with that stuff, yeah,
Winging it with the best of intentions.
yeah,
That is the impression I get of the art world. Like, I do know several visual artists that it does seem, I mean, I do think that music can also be intense as well, but it's intense in a very different way. At least with music, I see so much more. Of course, there's competition within music, but there's, at least I've found, and it sounds like you're describing, there's more of a collaborative spirit in some ways.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe that's what felt closer to me because I love collaborating.
Yeah. When you said like you mixed your own stuff, I was just like, oh, I have so much respect for that. Once I get to the mixing phase, I'm like, I do a rough mix and I'm like, nah, I'm gonna give this to my friendos. Like,
I love mixing them. It's like definitely one of my most favorite things to do for sure.
wow. I was
Yes,
like, tell me more.
it's just it's so incredibly fun what you can do, how much you can shape a piece of music in the mix. It's like, yeah, pretty great.
That's so funny. Once I get to the mix phase, I'm like, I'm so not like tired of the song, but I feel like I've taken the song sonically as far as I want to, and I want to hear what someone else does with it.
Yeah, I mean that's also really valid. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder how much distance I would need from one of my own songs to mix it properly.
I think it's also great to work with mixers. Some people mix all day, every day, and they're so good. I have a few friends that are like do that full time, and they're amazing mixers, and they can kill it. You know, that's also pretty cool to collaborate with folks like that.
Yeah. I guess like, are you actively working on music right now?
I am, yeah, definitely. I always am.
Yeah. Oftentimes when you're releasing something, you might have recorded it like years prior. And now you're in like, in some ways, like a very different emotional place, but that does give you a very interesting perspective then on the work that you're releasing.
Yeah, I mean it is old. I think most people when they make a record and put it out, they already feel like or like most of my friends have giving me the same sentiment. It's like they're already on to the next thing and want to be. But in my case, it's a little more extreme because it's 2 albums of music that, yeah, has now been finished for a while. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm excited about, yeah, more stuff I'm doing now and continue to like expand and all, like I was saying before, like new collaborators and, you know, trying to learn about more about string arrangements and things that can, yeah, take my sound in new directions, you know.
I dig that. And at least it's, you know, it's an oddly fertile time to do that because you can listen to as much Ultimate Thunderstorm as you want right now.
And I do.
You're like, trust me, it really is my top played track.
I only knew that because at the end of the year when everyone did that, you know, Spotify and Apple Music thing, and I was like, I just looked and I was like, oh yeah, of course, duh. And it was like by far the most.
Oh, that's really funny. Do you listen to it when you sleep as well?
Sometimes, yeah, but it has to be at this really specific volume level. It can't be too loud, you know. It
Yep.
has to create this illusion that it's actually coming from outside your home. So it's like that's part of the fun of like creating the space. Like I have speakers in every room of my house, so it's like dialing it like a nice environment, you know.
I
Such a
love that.
nerd, busted.
You're like, shh, I've curated the thunderstorm. This is the experience we're having.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love that so much.
I mean, it's good. Everyone should try it. Like I honestly think it's pretty good.
Oh, that does sound magical. That sounds back to the potions. I was like, yeah, this checks out. I was looking at the press release that that your publicist sent, and I was like, the photos are really cool. Who are the photos of on the siblings covers?
It's actually a reel of 8mm film that I bought, like and found. It's quite old, but I used to like buy weird junk a lot, like found photos and film reels and whatever, and I would use it in making art. And anyway, so I was like, I digitized this roll of film, and it just I don't know what it is or who they are. But I'm like I got obsessed with it, and I projected it and then reshot it with like a really good proper camera, digital camera, so I could then work with it in the computer. And I just found these little moments where like I guess I'm thinking it's probably some parents that basically just got their first ever film camera, but they don't know how to use it like a film camera, so they're like taking a picture of their children, you know, like a portrait basically. The kids are trying to be as still as they can, but they can't be still because they're kids, so they're like moving. So I just like slowed it down a shitload, and I really like it because it kind of exists in this space of like, is it slow and dreamy and pretty, or is it like really haunted and kind of fucked up? Like I can't decide. Sometimes I look at it and I think it's like kind of depressing and like haunted, and other times I'm like, just think it's like kind of sweet and like a nice moment. But yeah, I like that about it.
It feels very nostalgic in a way.
Well, I mean, it's just old. It's just actually old. So yeah, it's just old.
Like it's literally old, Pam. No, I always think about like the roots of the word nostalgia, that it's about like a longing for a homecoming. And like looking at those pictures, it's like when you look at old moments, even if they're not your old moments, it sometimes harkens back to like wanting to return to something, even if that wasn't the thing that existed in your mind or wasn't your experience. It's like wanting to return to an experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I felt like it encapsulated the albums and, you know, calling it siblings. And
Yeah.
I don't know if they're siblings, but I kind of made up that they are. And yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was a nice, it just felt really like woven to the whole thing.
I love that. That's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome. Oh, well, thank you for being so generous with your time and joining me and chatting with me.
Yeah. Thanks for talking about music and everything. It was really nice. And yeah. Thanks for having me.
Oh, Thank you again for listening to this episode of Why Not Both? If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform. You can also come hang out with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, both on Instagram and on Twitter. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com and feel free to support them on Patreon. Extra special thanks to our producer, Laura Studeris, who is literally a rock star. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next episode.